Friday, September 25th, 2015. This is your morning edition on I-24 News. Coming up later today, world leaders converge in New York City for the United Nations General Assembly to try and tackle the world's most pressing problems, and there are quite a few of them. More than 700 people are killed in a stampede in Mecca during the annual pilgrimage to Islam's holiest city. And later on the show, the Muppets are on the air, and 1 million moms slam the show as perverted. Stay tuned. Good morning, I'm Yael Avi, and we begin with German Chancellor Angela Merkel, actually, who has called on the United States, Russia, and Middle Eastern countries to help fight the causes of the massive influx of refugees knocking on the doors of the European Union. Her message yesterday, a plea for international action, is sure to be echoed repeatedly over the coming days. She was trying to set the tone, one might say, as world leaders converge in New York City to attend the 70th session of the United Nations General Assembly, as the stage is set for the annual meeting of heads of state. It seems the world has never been so much in need of unity, yet so far from achieving it. We're joined in studio by former Deputy Foreign Minister and former Ambassador to the United States, my faux pas, Ambassador Dani Ayalon. Good morning to you.
Good morning, Yael.
Also with us, Russia Today's Middle East Bureau Chief Paula Sleer. Paula, good morning to you. And of course, we cannot do this without Avni Kaufman, I-24 News contributor. Thank you all for being with me this morning. Before we break this down, as we said, many things on the agenda at the UN General Assembly this upcoming week. Let's take a look at the following report by Gabby Weinegers about what exactly is at play.
The 70th United Nations General Assembly kicks off Friday morning in New York with a special opening summit on sustainable development. Leaders will sign on to 17 goals and 169 targets that they will work towards from now until 2030. Pope Francis will be the first to address the ambitious agenda, which includes the total eradication of extreme poverty, the elimination of diseases like HIV and malaria, and the demand for more action against climate change. Barack Obama, Vladimir Putin, Xi Jinping and Francois Hollande are all set to address the chamber on the same day, within the space of just a few hours. It's the Russian president's first attendance in a decade, and also Xi's General Assembly debut. In the first joint appearance by Obama and Rouhani, there is speculation that the two presidents may meet for the first time. Analysts say Rouhani's speech will be an indicator as to whether he's willing to work with the United States on several issues, after signing an historic but controversial nuclear accord. For the first time ever, a Palestinian flag will fly outside the United Nations headquarters after a symbolic resolution of recognition in the Observer Nation's campaign for statehood. Leader Mahmoud Abbas will reportedly drop a bombshell in the speech that is neither the dismantling of the Palestinian Authority nor the cancellation of the Oslo Accords. Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu will address the conference a day after Mahmoud Abbas and is likely to respond to his statements. His speech is also likely to focus on the nuclear deal brokered with Tehran, which he has consistently lobbied against. Every UN summit since the start of the Syrian civil war in 2012 has included important meetings on the conflict, but this time, the crisis in Syria has become a political crisis in Europe. Ban Ki-moon will host a high-level meeting on the sidelines of the General Assembly, alongside heads of states and foreign ministers, where we can expect new pledges of humanitarian assistance.
We're joined from New York by Benny Avni, New York and UN correspondent for Israel Public Radio. Benny, good morning to you.
Good morning. How are you?
We're good. Thank you for being with us. New York up at heaves right now, and surely because of the Pope. But we're going to touch on the UNGA when it comes to this upcoming week, which is going to see a lot of speeches. But the first day, everybody is concerned about the order of speeches. Who's going to speak first? Firstly, of course, it's the United States president. But what are the main topics? What is the thing that everybody's going to be dealing with? Is what we're wondering. Is it Iran or is it the refugee crisis?
Okay, let's start with the schedule, actually. As you said, the Pope is in town. He's going to speak later on tonight, your dates, at the United Nations. He's going to address, for the first time, the General Assembly. That is going to be very exciting for a lot of people. It's going to be in the morning here. And of course, that's going to be part of the shutting down of this town for traffic or pedestrians. It's going to be a nightmare here for the whole week.
Yeah, but it's the Pope. And moving along.
That's the Pope. And then moving along, over the weekend, and this is another innovation this year, there's going to be a Millennium Goals kind of meeting about development and all sorts of goals the United Nations is going to agree for the next few years. So people such as Prime Minister Cameron of Britain is going to be there on the weekend and will, weirdly enough, not address the General Assembly when Britain addresses it. His foreign minister will address it. So that's that. That's how important the Brits see this weekend event, but I don't think it's going to be very exciting for the Israeli audience. I think for the Israeli audience, there's two important days. Monday, which is the opening day.
Right.
United States is speaking second. That's President Obama. But that's going to be a huge day because there's also China, the Russian Federation, and, of course, Rouhani of Iran. Now, the White House is now saying there's not going to be a handshake or there's no plan for a handshake between Obama and Rouhani, but they're all going to be, as they always are, on the first day at the luncheon, and there's an opportunity there. But I think the most important thing that happens on Monday is a meeting that was added to the schedule between Obama and President Putin.
Right.
That is going to be about Syria, a very important topic that is going to be one of the biggest things here. By the way, over the weekend, one of the things they're going to discuss in the development thing and later on in the week as well is the issue of the refugees. Now, as far as Israel is concerned, as you mentioned in your opening, the most important days are going to be Wednesday and Thursday. In addition to Abbas's speech on Wednesday and the symbolic raising of the flag, there's going to be like a whole ceremony there. Everybody got invitation. Even I got an invitation to that, and usually I don't get very, they don't get chummy with me. I get chummy with them. I don't know. And, but so that is what is going to happen on the margins is even more important.
Exactly.
There's going to be a meeting of what they call the Quartet Plus, the Quartet being the United States, Russia, the European Union, the UN. That's the Quartet. And this year they decided to also add some Arab countries to it, which is Saudi Arabia, Jordan and Egypt, and the Arab League. And that is going to enlarge the framework of people pushing for renewal of the peace talks. But as we know, President Abbas of the Palestinian Authority has declared already that he's going to bring some kind of a bombshell in there, and there's all kinds of speculations what that might be. One of the outlier speculations is that he might declare an end to Oslo or his own resignation. All this is going to put put some huge spin into this whole situation with a Quartet Plus. There is, I saw somewhere that Abbas was saying that his speech is already prepared, but he's also going to speak with Secretary of State Kerry, and perhaps there will be some changes, he said, to the bombshell. And then Thursday, there's going to be Bibi Netanyahu. We know that he knows his way around the bomb at the UN, cartoon bomb.
And we're wondering if he's going to come with props, right? And
yeah.
No, and it's fascinating to see, but I'm assuming, as you said, you gave us the entire schedule, but you mentioned Monday being the coming up, the first day coming up with those very, very important speeches. I want to thank you, Benny Avni, for joining us from New York, UN correspondent, New York correspondent for Israel Public Radio. Taking a look at what's at the agenda, and I think what we heard was clearly mentioned that one of the main things will be Syria. One of the main things will be refugees. But there are headlines already speaking of Syria and the Russian involvement. Avni Kaufman here with us. There's a headline that's, it's pre this entire trip, right? There's kind of it kind of, I don't want to say sets the agenda, but what is it?
Yeah, one of the things that's kind of hovering in the background of this whole meeting is the, shall I say, the weakness or the inefficacy of the UN Security Councils, particularly when it comes to what's going on in Syria. The U.S. is very unhappy with how Russia has used its veto powers 4 times already when it's tried to reach a resolution on Syria. And Samantha Powers is apparently threatening to go to other organizations on Syria, but also to bypass it and maybe do things by itself as a decision-making body. I think it's a bit, personally, and Paula might actually be surprised I'm going to say this.
I'm surprised.
I think it's a bit hypocritical of the United States to say, to say something about this. It's true that the U.S. it's vetoed 3 times in the past decade, usually when it comes to Israeli issues. And since 1991, when Russia took over the Soviet seat, actually the U.S. has used the veto power more than Russia has. The U.S. has used it 14 times. When it comes to Israel, mostly almost 90% of the time when it comes to Israeli issues. And Russia has used it 13 times. So it's true that one could say that Russia is, in a way, facilitating Assad's, propping up Assad still and continuing who is continuing the carnage in Syria. But one could also argue that the U.S. is facilitating the occupation since 1991. Settlements have tripled, more than tripled in size since 1991. So, just to be a bit fair, if I could just be the devil's advocate just for a few seconds.
That never happens with you, but it's a very valid point, and it's good to have Ambassador Elon with us. I'm actually going to start with you because we're taking a look at this UN General Assembly that's coming up. You have spent time also in the United States working in and around these. At the end of the day, I don't want to, the United Nations is an important body. When we're listening to arguments as such, it seems like that this UNGA Assembly is a power play between the U.S. and Russia, and who basically decides the fate of the Middle East in some ways, or deciding together the fate of the Middle East.
Absolutely, and the UN is only a venue. This is not, it's more show than substance. It's a beauty pageant, it's a meeting place, but not more than that. You were quite right, or you were not far off in your introduction, because I did serve 4 years in the UN, so I know exactly what's going on there. And every 10 years, they have a special General Assembly for heads of states. And this time, I guess it's going to be very important in wake of the aftermath of the Iran deal, Syria and the refugees, and also the economic situation, monetary policy of China. So having the Chinese leader, the Russian and the American is very important in itself, but the margin, the meetings, the bilateral meetings will be much more important than what we see in the General Assembly.
Exactly, the bilateral and bilateral meetings as such, because I want to touch on Iran and Syria in some ways. And actually, Paul, I'm going to start with you. In bilateral meetings as such, and what's going on, the Putin-Obama meeting that's coming up, that everybody's saying that's just been sanctioned. Everybody's saying that this Iran deal is actually also, in many ways, it's a way of Putin to support his pal Assad. It's in a way that Assad has actually been sanctioned by the people sitting in that room because of the Russian push to keep him in power.
I mean, what is interesting, of course, Syria is the main issue on the agenda for the Russians, and this is the first time that the Russian president will be addressing the UN in 10 years. But what they're pushing for essentially is this international coalition that will fight against terrorism. And in the same draft proposal that they've put forward, and that has been debated on in the run-up to this and has been rejected by the United States, they spoke about, they being the Russians, Syria and Iran being part of that international coalition against Islamic State. And it begs what you're saying, that the Russians are attempting to give a legitimacy to Syria and Iran in the fight.
Exactly.
For the Russians, it's not just about what's happening in Syria. Russia still is feeling the pinch of international sanctions. It would like to present itself in a much better international image as being a kind of peace broker or a country that is coming to the fore in fighting terrorism. Of course, the Russians are facing the threat of Islamic State as much as any other countries in the world. And at the same time, for the Russians, they have their interests in Syria. So they're going to continue to argue that they have a right to prop up the Assad regime as much as the Americans and the Europeans have been doing the opposite to the opposition fighters on the ground.
With air bases right now in several places in Syria.
Which the Russians haven't denied, but at the same time there are areas, and in fact the only areas in Syria that are calm at the moment are areas where Assad soldiers are in power. For example, Damascus, other such cities, and the Russians again will argue that it's because they're evening the status quo, that if they weren't doing so, you would have Islamic State jihadists taking control of the entire region and you'd have a refugee problem that's even more intense than it is at the moment.
And is it even, Ambassador Mayelon, I'm wondering with you, is it evening the status quo, or is it in a way, let me actually rephrase this, is it kind of a fait accompli, do you think? Because it seems like 2 years ago, I think it was 2 years ago, we were all sitting around this table, or several of us, in and out, and Assad was done. Assad had red lines drawn in the sand. Assad was going away. The United States demanded him to be out. But it seems like this UNGA, when it comes to Syria, this kind of a fait accompli that Assad is going to stay in power, including not sanctioned, obviously, because they cannot, but that Israel has no problem with it, so it seems.
Well, Assad will be the last chip on the table. He will be the last card that the Russians may use for their own interest. What's most important for them is, of course, to keep their assets. Basically, the Latakia and Tartus, which are home to the Russian Navy. I guess what we see here really is the Russians moving in as a result of the vacuum power of the United States.
Has that happened? I mean, are we looking at Russia becoming a player? Can it handle?
Absolutely. We see it, by the way, with Egypt, Jordan, Saudi Arabia, as the Russians are actually intensifying their relationship, also arms deals, also civil nuclear reactors that may be sold to these countries. Definitely, we see the United States may leaving the area. I think this is probably within the grand strategy of Obama to pretty much leave the Middle East. Right. It's only problems here. He doesn't need the oil anymore because the United States is now energetically independent. Is that something that the United
States can afford to do, though?
I don't think so. Yeah. But evidently, Obama thinks that he can do that. And this is something of a great concern to the allies, the traditional long-term allies of the United States, Saudi Arabia, Bahrain, even Russia, and even Egypt and Saudi Arabia, and Israel as well.
And Israel as well, but looking at the, at the power plays and the power vacuums that, that have been created through this situation, it's not just Assad. What is very, very interesting to me to see at this UNGA would be actually what this Syrian war or the conflicts in the Middle East have created throughout the world. And apropos what we said about Angela Merkel, Assad seems to be staying in power. That means that more people are going to try and flee Syria. And if we're looking at several headlines coming out when it comes to the refugee crisis, what are we looking at pre this UNGA?
We're talking first about the flow of migrants is continuing nonstop by sea and over ground. Most of the focus now is on the eastern bloc of Hungary and, of course, Serbia and Croatia. But I think we're seeing, as we can see from this headline from the New York Times, reminiscent of years past, this migration crisis in Europe is kind of flaming old tensions in the Balkans. Right. Promoting a war of words in a region, where bloody memories run deep. Pretty deep.
Croatia and Serbia trade barbs, as migration.
Yeah, Croatia closed its borders a few days ago after Serbia was pretty much busing all of the immigrants there all the way over to Croatia, and Croatia just couldn't handle anymore, so they closed the borders. Serbia immediately responded with a ban of itself, on products, Croatian products going into Serbia, and it compared the measures of Croatia to the Nazi puppet state during World War II. So tensions are running high, between these two countries, between, of course, Hungary and Germany, between Germany and the UK. We're talking about the EU falling apart. This is something that is probably going to be addressed in the UNGA as well.
Is that something apropos UNGA? Because if we're looking at, this flow of people when it comes to, forget the control of power and, let's all be not very naive, the control of power in the Middle East that has to do with money and oil and whatnot. When it comes to that problem, Paul, I'm wondering with you, is that something that, will be addressed by these world leaders and can be solved on that stage? In the back scenes?
Well, the quick answer is yes, they will address it, and no, they can't solve it.
The speeches. Yeah, exactly.
I mean, it of course is one of the main issues on the agenda at the moment as well. I mean, the figures point to something like more than $1 billion that have already been spent to try and resettle refugees and deal with the crisis, and another $1 billion that is being pledged. One of the issues that the European countries are looking at is trying to assist the neighboring countries because, of course, most of the refugees, I think it's 80%, if not 90%, are coming from Syria. But the question, of course, is how, in fact, you're going to deal with a refugee problem that continues to grow. There was a meeting recently where Angela Merkel was trying to get European countries to commit to 120,000, and there just was no solution. So it might be on the agenda, but it's a very, very difficult topic to tackle. And yes, as Avni mentioned, it does bring in questions like the future of the EU, the future of the Schengen visa. The countries have closed their borders, but they can only do this for 3 months. Then they have to make a decision. And if they cannot make a decision in 3 months, it's a crisis in terms of what will happen next.
In terms of what will happen next, and when you're looking at that, Ambassador Long, because you spend time at the...
Also at the UN, right?
At the UN, exactly.
I enjoyed Washington more.
Because you spent time there. I know I'm being, cynical about this thing, but, Assad staying in power, as I said to Paula, it keeps the civil war, in my mind, okay, I'll say it, keeps the civil war going. That's the way I look at it, which means that more people will be fleeing those shores, more people will be trying to reach them, and we just saw 4,500 crossing into Europe in one day, 2 days ago. So is that something that the UN can help facilitate and make some sort of a resolution?
Absolutely not.
Yeah.
I mean, if you look at the history of the UN last 70 years, from 1945...
Which apropos they're celebrating,
right,
yes.
There isn't a case where they really brought about peace. If there were any peace agreements, especially in the Middle East,
right,
it was bypassing the US, like the Oslo Agreement, like the Camp David with Egypt in 1979, like the peace with Jordan. Yeah. Absolutely, the UN is rendered almost obsolete. It's a rubber stamp, pretty much, for the Muslim or Arab automatic majority. Hence, the flag, which is against all UN rules, the Palestinian flag outside the building over there, and many, many other things. All these resolutions that are automatic against Israel, one-sided. By the way, Ami mentioned here the US exercising their veto powers more than Russia. This is exactly because of this automatic majority, in the General Assembly against Israel by the Palestinians and their cohorts.
Which the other side would argue,
right.
would argue differently, of course.
Which side you're on?
Yeah, which leads me to think, that's the UN. It's kind of a way, it's a place where everybody sits and stays on their side. And yeah,
one could say if you have 14 vetoes from the Americans and 13 vetoes from the Russians, there is some sort of equilibrium there. There's some sort of status quo Cold War kind of equilibrium there that maybe it works for some people.
Maybe it works.
If you want something done, it's not through the UN, it's bilateral. The Syrian issue, of course, is going to be with us more, and you alluded to it, with the Russians now stepping in. I believe what we'll see in Syria is actually carving the region into areas
kind of like what happened
interest.
In Iraq.
Exactly. We'll have little Syria in the Alawi area on the shore, which will be actually controlled by Russia, basically. And we will see more war and more fight, which is not against Russian interests. It keeps the European occupied with the influx of refugees. Ukraine is swept under the rugs. And in many ways, the Russians are going to be actually, or so far, they have been the winner of this, I would say, upheaval on the international scene.
Mesopotamia, if we are to quote Jon Stewart, in some ways.
They're in a win-win situation.
They're in a win-win situation. I'm not going to look at Paula and try and figure something out. We're going to move along with the news, moving along with the headlines. Avni, Kaufman, and all the guests still in studio. What did we miss in the headlines? It was hard to miss this one.
You really can't miss this. It's been a really bloody Eid al-Adha that started yesterday. First of all, violence that was perpetrated by ISIS in Yemen, 2 suicide bombers in a mosque in Sana'a that killed about 25 people. That, unfortunately, was actually the small event, the least significant event. Yesterday.
Just before you continue, Yemen, yet again, another place in the Middle East,
yes,
where being now again 2 foes, Iran and Saudi Arabia,
right,
and people are dying in
between. But this is an ISIS.
This is an ISIS responsibility for this, but there's a vacuum there of power, right, and there's mayhem.
And moving across to the horrific catastrophe in Mecca, over 700 people were killed in a stampede in Mecca as the Hajj began 2 days ago. We have a report about this.
Let's take a look.
Eid al-Adha, the feast of the sacrifice, the second of the 2 central Muslim holidays, began Thursday, attracting a record number of worshippers to Saudi Arabia. But just outside the holy Muslim city of Mecca, over 800 pilgrims were killed in the worst stampede in nearly a decade. The stampede broke out during the symbolic stoning of the devil ritual. They came here to fulfill Hajj, one of the 5 pillars of Islam. But a consistently growing number of pilgrims every year means stampedes and suffocation have become a real hazard.
The accident, as you know, was caused by overcrowding and also by pilgrims not following the movement instructions of the security and the ministry. However, this is God's will.
This is not the first time such an incident has occurred. In 1990, over 1,400 pilgrims were killed in Mina in a similar stampede. And as recently as 2006, more than 340 others were crushed during the pilgrimage.
We were coming back from the Jamarat, and on the way back I met my husband, and he was going to the Jamarat. The pilgrims began pushing each other, and they pushed people to the ground. I was about to die.
Across the holy site of Mecca and its surroundings, 7,000 CCTV cameras are set up for round-the-clock surveillance. The kingdom's main concern is terrorism, fearing the holy site would become a target for the warring factions in Islam. For many, this year's holiday is marred by a crisis for the Muslim faith, which precedes today's disaster. The Feast of the Sacrifice finds Muslims suffering mass dispersion and war across the Arab world, for all of whom Mecca is the last prayer for safety.
Well, apparently it's 800 or reaching the 800 numbers. Yeah. Some for conflicting. Well,
the number will probably go up because there are about 850 injured. So probably, amongst those numbers, we'll probably see those turn into fatalities as well.
Yeah, and finger blaming and whatnot. But as we move along, yeah.
Pope Francis, still in the States, yesterday had a very rare speech in front of a rare joint session between both houses in Congress. Between the House and the Senate.
They say John Boehner cried.
Yeah, they say that John Boehner cried. He said that he urged he wants the migrants to be seen as persons and not as numbers by the U.S. That was the main.
You never know whether it was agreement or disagreement.
Okay.
Yeah, he was really sniffling behind there. He even took out a handkerchief at one point. Yeah. By the way, there are also pictures of Mark Rubio crying. And the Republicans apparently were a bit more emotional than the Democrats. I don't know why.
But we also have a little bit of what the Pope had to tell the Congress, the American Congress. Let's have a listen.
Our world is facing a refugee crisis of a magnitude not seen since the Second World War. We must not be taken aback by the numbers, but rather view them as persons, seeing their faces and listening to their stories, trying to respond as best we can to their situation.
I love that he's speaking English.
He's speaking English. And you know what? He spoke, by the way, he really spoke to both Republicans and Democrats when he called for the global abolition of the death penalty. And he also said that the very basis of marriage and the family is being called into question. So that's a bit for the Republicans and a bit for the Democrats, talking to both sides.
But he had a Pope in Congress, and he sounded like Bernie Sanders. Stay with us. We'll be right back. Good morning, I-24 News Morning Edition on this Friday, September
25th. It's my parents' anniversary. That's why I remember that.
Good for you.
How many years?
44.
Wow. 44.
Yeah.
That's a long time.
That's a nice number, isn't it?
Yeah. And I want to surprise you with your mother. Just kidding. That would be nice.
Hi, son.
Must be the hair. I can see.
Must be the hair, exactly. And it is time to start with you, Avni, and this spirals viral. It is the web review, and your mom is watching.
You might not believe this, but I once had hair longer than Hans, but I won't get into that.
I do, and I've seen pictures.
Okay, we're gonna I'll show you the pictures. We're gonna start with Elton John and Vladimir Putin. Now, if you remember last week, a pair of Russian comedians pranked Elton John. They called him and they impersonated Putin. And Elton John really fell for it. He said, he said that the comedian said that they were going to meet him to talk about gay rights in Russia, which of course is a big issue, and he fell for it. But this time, apparently, Putin really called Elton John and said, "Yes, I will meet you. According to his spokesperson, Dmitry Peskov, he says, Putin said, I know some guys played a trick on you on the phone, but don't get offended. They are harmless people, though that, of course, does not justify what they did. And that he will be willing to meet him and talk gay issues.
I would have a heart attack if Putin called me and said that. I would really. I mean, can you imagine that call?
Did you listen to the phone call, the prank call?
Yeah, the prank is hilarious.
When you're Sir Elton John, you really think Putin's calling you. I mean, it's not such a big deal, I guess.
Yeah.
But if I was Elton John now, I'd like to say, like, okay, prove it. Like,
exactly.
No, I don't believe it. No.
I still don't believe it.
I still don't believe it.
I still don't believe it. Yeah, I know. I still don't believe it either.
It sounds too good to be true. So
maybe it was Obama.
He apologized for the prank. I mean, these guys are.
You don't think Putin apologizes so easily?
Exactly.
You think these two comedians are still running free?
Still running.
Well, at least now they not only fooled Elton John, they fooled all of mainstream media.
Exactly. Mainstream media is running with this. Yes.
A few pictures I want to show you from the Pope's visit.
Yes. 2 pictures.
One of the man, a boy. He's 11 years old. His name is Kristupas Vorobjovas, who became the only guy to get a really good selfie of him and himself and the Pope. Let's see it. He's now. Look at that. That's a nice little selfie. And another one, you know.
The Pope has a look of, what are these little things? And why do I have to do this all the time? Yes.
That's in D.C. Yeah. Another, before his mass that he gave in D.C., you know, when you think of tailgating, you think of, you know, at a football game, some big guys sitting in the back of a truck having some burgers, right? Let's see how they do it for the Pope. This is tailgating for the Pope, a group of nuns. Tailgating in there, you know, having some sandwiches.
It's like a block party.
That is the epitome of tailgating before Mass.
Yeah, amen. Oh, they're playing poker there in the back now.
Yeah. Okay. Snoop Dogg. The epitome of a man who, the man who knows his weed, shall I say. The man who knows his weed. Now, at a TechCrunch conference, he announced that he's going to have a platform that's called Mary Jane. It's a business platform, and it has everything about marijuana. It's a lifestyle media site with cannabis at the center. It's loaded with video content and editorial content. It's going to serve as an information hub for anyone who is interested in pot, whether it's, you know, the beginner, the newbie, or the seasoned smoker. Everything, it'll be like
I want to marry him, really. Is he single?
Mary Jane. I love the name, first of all. MaryJane.com.
MaryJane.com, definitely.
And I think it's going to do very, very well. I think this site is going to get a lot of hits. Probably going to be on top of the Google search results. It's going to be there. It's just going to be there.
Okay, yeah.
Right.
I'm going to contain my excitement.
Here is a... We'll have to talk about that over... I don't know.
Yes.
We're going to have to talk about a viral video that is going around of a young kid who is unfortunately her parents were divorced, and she caught them. You know, she was listening to them arguing, as usual, being very vocal. And let's just see a few seconds of her trying to calm things down.
Let's
just try your best. I don't want you and my dad to be replaced and meanies again. I want you and my dad to be placed as settled and be friends. I'm not trying to be mean. I just want everyone to be friends.
Oh.
Oh, I know. Hein Lieberman here with us. You're not there yet.
No, it's amazing. It's great. Yeah, no, I'm totally there.
Look, I actually watched it yesterday, and I turned to
I want to have kids now, just because of that. Like, if that's what I'm gonna come up with, then
I'm not trying to be
a little sarcasm there, Hein. You might want to wipe that up.
I'm so serious.
No, but it's heartbreaking. Actually, I watched it yesterday, and I was like, I turned to my partner, and I was like, you know what? Yeah.
She's good. That kid. It's a 4-minute long video where she's like really convincing.
No, incredibly so. And just be happy.
Be happy.
Just be happy.
Don't be up there. Be down
just
there.
Down here.
Down
level. Yeah. Settle down.
Not trying to be mean.
Yeah. Not trying to be mean.
Okay. My next segment is called A Tale of Two Books.
Okay.
We're going to start with Giselle Bundchen, who has a new coffee table book.
I was about to say.
But the price of this coffee table book will be $700 for a coffee table book. Only 1,000 copies of this limited edition page turner will be in print, and each will be personally signed by Bundchen, the 35-year-old, and they will contain 300 photos of the model. shot by world-renowned photographers like Irving Penn, David LaChapelle, and Jürgen
Can I just say
Teller.
that Tolstoy is turning in his grave somewhere?
Yeah. Easy money, I think, for Giselle, if I might say.
Kramer.
Exactly. Well, why $700?
Well, because it's a limited edition, Yael. It's a 1,000.
Because you're my friend.
Get it for your parents' anniversary.
All these pages,
oh my God, that's a great idea. Hi, folks.
Hey, Dad, that's for you. Sorry, Mom, couldn't afford getting you. And
here's a video of Avni online. I just want everybody
to be down here. To be down here. Stop being up here. Be down here.
I'm not trying to be mean.
I'm not trying to be mean. Just be friends.
Sorry.
But here's a book I might buy for them from Amy Schumer. And this is going to be called, she just signed a deal. It's not written yet. She's writing it, or it's almost done apparently. It's called The Girl with the Lower Back Tattoo. Now, what's interesting about this is the advance that she got on it, which is breaking records. She got $9 million, as opposed to other, similar comedians who also, have been writing books in the past few years. $9 million compared to Tina Fey, who wrote the famous Bossy Pants. She got $6 million for that. Lena Dunham got. Yeah. Lena Dunham got $3.7 million for Not That Kind of Girl. Aziz Ansari got $3.5 million for Modern Romance, which was a bestseller in the New York Times. $9 million advance for Amy Schumer book.
I will say this here. I have a lower back tattoo. And nobody, yes I do, and nobody offered me $9 million.
You know what you could have done with $9 million in Tel Aviv?
I'm sorry, Trainwreck was a really bad movie.
Oh my God, I'm glad you said that. I was about to see that. Really? Not to see it? No?
See it so you can...
Culture contributor.
See it so you can agree with me.
Okay.
How's that?
Okay. Time for one last one.
One last one? Okay. This is a quick video, an umbrella designed for rain-free texting. You don't need it, but you want it.
But you want it. Let's take a look.
Fantastic.
You don't need it, but you want it.
You want it.
Wow.
I know you do.
Listen, I mean, after that groundbreaking bit of video, groundbreaking. I'm glad that we finally invented that.
Right.
But that's finally been invented.
Yeah.
Thank God.
Thank God.
And Chen Lieberman, it's time to move to you with the high culture.
I feel like I talked enough.
No.
Okay.
Now for the high-end culture,
Okay.
upscale culture. Yes.
So we can't talk enough about Kermit and Miss Piggy
No, we cannot.
reunion.
We cannot.
Now that the Muppets are back on ABC, the ratings were solid, the reviews were kind of cold, but let's see them doing an interview at Jimmy Kimmel's late night show.
Please.
You actually, I know if you're looking for somebody, we have put together a profile for you for, have you heard of Tinder?
Oh, yeah.
Oh,
yeah. Yes.
So I don't know, if you're interested in this, but if you are, we put something together for you. Put that up on the wall there. That's your, that's a great photograph.
Okay. Yeah,
and you can see, looking for guys into styes, let's get this pig in a blanket. Yes?
Sorry.
She already has a match with David Cameron.
She does.
Yeah.
Ka-ching, ka-ching. Yeah.
No, but really, we talked about it last week. Miss Piggy is a true feminist. She also got a feminist award last year, but now she's the first woman to host her own late night show. Since Joan Rivers, we didn't have a woman hosting a show, and Joan Rivers' show wasn't really successful.
Right.
So now she's talking about her show as the true
one.
Yeah,
we have
please.
that. Let's take a look.
I was just born this way. I can't help it. The lilacs in my dressing room don't smell lilac-y enough. Talk to God about lilacs.
Miss Piggy is thrilled to be bringing her fabulousness back to the spotlight on network television with the Muppets and her own show within a show, Up Late with Miss Piggy.
What happens when you have guests on that are not nearly as smart and as fabulous as yourself?
If I bumped all of those guests off the show, then I wouldn't have a show. No, I just gotta sit there and listen and pretend to be interested.
What does your show offer for late night viewers that we don't see from Kimmel or from Colbert or from Jimmy Fallon?
Well, a woman, for one.
Who is on your wish list to get on the show?
Clooney.
And what would your line of questioning be?
What are you doing on Saturday night?
Do you like having Kermit as a boss?
Let's just get one thing straight. I'm the boss. Okay? He's the executive producer. I'm the boss.
You're not the talent?
Well, I'm that too. You know, without the air quotes.
I can't get enough. I can't get enough of it. But now there's a petition of angry moms saying that the new Muppets is for adults and not for kids. Of course, it's for adults and not for kids. It's on 8 p.m. and there's a show within a show. But they still think that the Muppets are intended for their children. It was never. It never was.
I don't think it really was intended.
Yeah.
It was never intended for children.
Go watch Sesame Street.
My kids, for example, love watching the Muppets. We have DVDs of the Muppets and they love watching them. Maybe it was more kid-friendly, but it wasn't intended for kids.
Exactly.
It was written for adults. It was adult humor.
Exactly.
No, it was 8 p.m. I was allowed to watch it.
Exactly.
You were allowed to watch it with your parents, and I think that was the whole idea behind it.
What's the deal now? Are there like dirty jokes or something now? What's the deal?
Yeah, I mean, the whole relationship between Kermit and Miss Piggy, and Miss Piggy is promiscuous. She's dating a new man every night. But that's fine. And there was
that's
also
because kids have no access to that kind of information online.
Right. But now let's move to content that is more directed towards kids, and I don't think I'd like to see it. The Angry Birds movie.
Oh, no.
Yeah, so a smartphone game turned into a film, and we'll have to see if that really works. After that,
don't hold anything back, then.
Yeah, well, after that, we'll have the emoji. You know, it's a trend now. The smartphone is going to the big screen. So let's see the trailer and judge for ourselves.
Every time you are near, just like me, they love you.
Hey, Red, how are you? Oh, I'm horrible.
Yeah, wow.
Okay, great.
Yeah, yippee. Not an Oscar, but watchable.
Okay.
I think, yeah.
What's the plot?
So there's an angry bird, and it's going. There's an angry bird. She's going through anger management classes, but then there comes a pig and annoys her, and it's hard for her to deal. I don't know if it's a her or he.
But it's angry.
Anyway,
but it's angry. Yeah.
Exactly.
Okay.
And it's gonna be a hit. We know it's gonna be a hit. So let's talk about the Pirelli Calendar.
Please.
So since 1964, it's known to be a calendar with sexy women, sometimes undressed, models, skinny models. Now, this year, with Annie Leibovitz as the photographer, they're going to take strong women such as Amy Schumer, Yoko Ono, Patti Smith. But my question is, who uses calendars these days? Why do you need a calendar? It's like, that's unnecessary. And the whole strong women empowerment from a company that since 1964 has sold women as just, another product. Then I don't need their reimbursement, and I don't think Amy Schumer needs it.
The whole hype about this Annie Leibovitz strong women being, photographed. I'm wondering, can it be a coffee book,
Strong women selling tires. They don't need to sell tires. They just need to be strong women without the help of Pirelli. But it's a change. It's a change. It's a statement.
Maybe it will make a good, coffee table book.
I'm already buying the Giselle. I don't have any money left for the calendar.
$700. I think that's the highlight of the day for me. I can actually print her pictures, bind them together,
and make some money.
Like exclusive
make some money,
right?
exactly.
Well, I wouldn't know. But even after they're going to be on the net afterwards, right? And people can
it's
just.
It's easier to get a hacker
Coming
to
up, guys,
hack into a phone and steal pictures.
Get it from
All
the
the time we have.
iCloud.
Giselle Bundchen was the highlight of our show. Stay with us. We've got the best of the week that was, including an exclusive interview, actually, a one-on-one interview with Yair Lapid, the man who wants to be Benjamin Netanyahu. So stay tuned, take a listen, and tune in Tuesday, when we'll be back.